The Cleveland Browns announced that they are going to overhaul their offensive coaching staff. And guess what that means? Once the new faces are in place, they're going to overhaul and bring in some big names on their offense. We're going to talk about it now. Your latest Locked On Browns is live.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things dog pound, LGB, and ELOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. I've been here now with you all for 7 seasons. You guys know that. And I appreciate you all who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. If you are not part of the everyday crowd by now, well, easiest way to fix that is subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. And the show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase the Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. Use code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's JASE Medical.com. With the news coming early Wednesday, the Cleveland Browns have moved on from Stump Mitchell. They have moved on from T.C. McCartney. They have moved on from offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt. First rumored interview, Deuce Staley to be the running back coach for the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, Deuce Staley, long-time Philadelphia Eagle, long time with the Philadelphia Eagles. Andrew Berry obviously has very, very good ties, very, very good respect with the Philadelphia Eagle organization. Deuce Staley was with the Carolina Panthers last year. As we all know, that all went straight to HE double hockey sticks. Of course, Deuce Staley, and I know everybody's upset, again, if you saw the previous episode, you should, if you haven't yet, because, none of this news should be shocking anybody. This Cleveland Browns offense was not a world beater. It was not beating people into the ground. It was good, but there is major room for improvement. And if you're going to improve the coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball, like you did last year with the defense side of the ball, you have to think in a new influx of talent is going to come along with that as well. The wide receiver position, everything the Cleveland Browns have gotten from Amari Cooper the last 2 years for a 5th-round pick that was given up for Amari, that is absolutely a haul for them. What Amari did, keep in mind, this year limited for a lot of the season, still well over 1,200 yards, over 70 receptions, did not play in the last 2 ball games. Amari Cooper, but you have to be smart about this. You always have to play both ends of it. You have to understand, hey, if he can go out there next year and give us the same statistical output, that is absolutely fantastic. But you also have to keep in the back of the mind, and this is what got them last year, got them a little bit this year. They were hoping Donovan Peoples-Jones was going to be a proven bona fide number 2 last year. Was good, was close, but it didn't pan out. This year, they kept chasing their tail, trying to find a bona fide proven number 2 wide receiver. Elijah Moore, I still think there's more potential with Elijah Moore. There's more potential to be great with Elijah Moore, but you cannot look at Elijah Moore and some of these names that are going to be available in free agency. And this is something you can't address in the draft. Cleveland Browns are going to be drafted in the 50s with their first selection. This is a great wide receiver class, but what's going to be left when they actually do get the opportunity to have their name on the clock? There are receivers available in this year's free agent cycle. You want to go slot, a guy who's been a thorn in the side of the Cleveland Browns for a long, long time. And yes, there's 2 names from the Cincinnati Bengals, but we'll start with this one first here. Cleveland Browns have never truly had a bona fide slot receiver. Jarvis did it, but the Browns tried to use him a little bit more on the outside as well. Tyler Boyd is just a smooth receiver from his days at University of Pittsburgh, from everything he did at the Cincinnati Bengals. And now I don't know what the Bengals plan is. There's no way you're retaining both of these guys between T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. If you are the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm assuming your goal would be to retain, obviously, T. Higgins. But you tell me there's an opportunity for Cleveland Browns to get their hands on Tyler Boyd and have a first bona fide true slot receiver. that I can remember this team having, probably since Hawk, right? And certainly the first one for Coach Kevin Stefanski. That is a name I would certainly be intrigued by. And the Browns are going to go bold here. They did the same thing last year on defense with the coaching staff. Looks like they're going to do the same thing right now on the offense with the coaching staff, which meant a lot of players for the defensive staff, which means a lot of players for the offensive staff. You continue to look on it here. And now there are some other, obviously, tremendously large names here as well. You have your headliners of this class for right now look to be T. Higgins and certainly look to be Michael Pittman Jr. as well. Michael Pittman Jr. over 100 receptions this year for the Indianapolis Colts. And keep in mind, most of that was done with Gardner Minshew. So for a guy like Michael Pittman, if the opportunity is there to move on, and kind of hard to figure out what the Colts are going to do, obviously, certainly a little bit, early in the process. Michael Pittman, though, with Anthony Richardson isn't going to be that quarterback that's going to throw for 4,000 yards. Is that going to be a place where Michael Pittman is going to get fed the way he needs to be fed? If not, you got to wonder if Michael Pittman would have interest in staying with the Indianapolis Colts and would not be looking elsewhere. T. Higgins. And the thing with T. Higgins is the only problem T. Higgins has is he is never going to be able to be the Jamar Chase to Joe Burrow. Those two guys just got a special thing going. And there were a lot of talk last year, obviously, in regards to the free agent class from the Cincinnati Bengals about the Browns and maybe interest in Jesse Bates. The Atlanta Falcons just absolutely wrote a monstrous check. And granted, Jesse Bates made All-Pro and Jesse Bates maybe proved to be worth that money. That was a dollar amount the Cleveland Browns were not going to commit to as a secondary player. They wanted to spread the money around. They didn't just want to bring in one name. Obviously, it worked for the Browns. The defense last year was top shelf, top notch. But T. Higgins could have a chance to come in here and look, could be the number one right away. Truly could be. And it could be where, Amari is more of the route runner and, and T could be your big play vertical guy, which is something the Browns want to make sure they can continue. It won't be Joe Flacco. It'll obviously be Deshaun Watson. But once they found that vertical game, they saw how much it made it easier for their offense to go. Another guy to look into here as well, Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, had the bounce back year this year with the Jacksonville Jaguars after missing an entire season due to gambling. Just leave it at that. Calvin Ridley, it's a name. He's a great route runner. Calvin Ridley is kind of Amari Cooper light. Certainly younger, not that much younger. A lot of people had their doubts about Amari coming to play here in Cleveland, coming to play in the elements. Notice how that talk died down after the 2 seasons Amari put together for himself here with the Cleveland Browns. But Calvin Ridley, that is a name to watch as well. Cleveland Browns are going to go bold at wide receiver. They're going to go bold at a couple of skill positions and then an offensive tackle position to figure out as well. But make no mistake, once you made the coaching changes that the Cleveland Browns did today, there's going to be a lot in play for the Cleveland Browns this year. We're going to keep it going. We're going to talk a little bit about the running back room. Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns. Nobody go anywhere. This next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today, I want to tell you how I really feel about something. Having teenagers is difficult sometimes. They're trying to find their own path, but you want to rein them in. You want them to understand and be respectful. Now, this is the formative years. You want to teach them that everything they're learning and how they're going to be able to apply it. They don't always want to listen. I never wanted to listen when I was a teenager, but this is something that is always a slippery slope to navigate. You want your kids to grow up to be good people, and that is certainly what me and my beautiful wife are trying to do. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems in our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. We are the easiest, most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on a 2 to 6 player stat projection, and you can watch your winnings roll in You want to play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz. You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. PrizePicks. We continue on here, your latest Locked On Browns. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate each and every one of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. If you are not part of the everyday crowd, well, you need to be. Make a new plan, subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Now, with the moves that are made, and, we talked about this, all off season, and what those changes for the defense did this year. You didn't go out. You went out and you got 2 veteran edge rushers. You drafted another edge rusher. You brought in 3 veteran defensive tackles. You drafted another defensive tackle. The Cleveland Browns are not going to go into this season quietly. They are going to make noise. And I don't want to hear about off-season champs, this, that, and the other thing. What they did last year got this team to where it needed to be to go 11-6. Should have turned out better. No question about it. I agree. Y'all agree. We're still bitter. We're still scorned. I get it. But have to start looking to the future. Now, the running back class in free agency. And again, the draft class, the wide receiver draft class looks like it's going to be really, really good. The running back class, not nearly as much. So the Browns are going to be active in free agent running backs. They have no choice. You got names out there like a Derrick Henry, obviously Josh Jacobs. What about Tony Pollard? Tony Pollard from the Dallas Cowboys. Wouldn't Tony Pollard, who would come in and probably be one of the best receiving backs that's ever been in the backfield in the Kevin Stefanski regime. And I'm not saying look at Tony Pollard this year. Last year, Tony Pollard's running routes like a wide receiver. He's running that wheel route and finding ways to get matched up against a linebacker or a safety and just cooking guys. There was a Minnesota Viking game last year. He ran that wheel route, was never defended, was never touched. Game-breaking speed. And the thing is, the Browns could offer him a decent amount of money because you're most likely going to bring Nick Chubb back on a small base salary with a lot of incentives. Anything you get from Nick will be gold. And I have no issues bringing Nick back. I absolutely want Nick back. But none of us have any idea just exactly what Nick Chubb can bring to this team next year. Do you think a new running back coach, a new offensive coordinator, a new offensive scheme can help Jerome Ford? That's certainly a possibility, and I wouldn't disagree with you. Other running backs available, Devin Singletary. I think we all just saw what Devin Singletary is capable of. Most likely going to stay with the Houston Texans, but I don't think we have any doubts about that. Clyde Edwards-Helaire barely played in his time with the Kansas City Chiefs. First-round pick. Things didn't necessarily work out. Next thing you know, oh my, next thing you know, here he is, available in free agency. Interesting name. DeAndre Swift will be available from the Philadelphia Eagles after a great year for them. You also can look at, there was one more here. I had Cam Akers, another name that could look very, very appealing. One of my personal favorite running backs that I've had for a long time, Rashard Penny. J.K. Dobbins, a guy going through his own injury history. These are a lot to consider. These are a lot to think of. The Cleveland Browns should be very, very active in the wide receiver market. This is the toughest part about roster management. And, there's going to be a difficult conversation. Again, look, the Browns are going to be in the same situation with Kareem Hunt that they were last year. They could never find a way to make it work. Kareem Hunt, if you look at the touchdowns and you look at the timing of the touchdowns last year for the Browns, 2023 for the Browns, all crucial. all big, 2 touchdowns in the playoffs. Kareem was fantastic for this team. But the fact of the matter is you were forever trying to get younger at the running back position. And as great as it was for Kareem to basically answer, the bat signal, the bad signal, Nick Chubb went down, but the bad signal that they needed help. And things worked out for them. Kareem was still available. And it was a hand-in-glove fit as Kareem knew the offense. But it's going to be different. It's going to be a new system. There's going to be a lot of tweaks. There's going to be a lot of changes to the way this team is going to operate and maneuver on the offensive side of the ball. And you're going to have to make a commitment. For me, the name is Tony Pollard. Like I look at Pittman, I look at T. Higgins, and I would gladly bring in either one of those guys, even Calvin Ridley. But I look at this running back free agent market, and I got to be honest, that name Tony Pollard looks extremely, extremely appealing to me. Can help obviously as a receiver, can help as a runner. This is something that the Browns are going to have to be smart and going to have to be active about. And, you're going to hear people, well, the Browns, this is their cap and this is what they have. And, and I'll save you 13, 14 million in segments right off the bat. But when you made this move and you made this commitment to Deshaun Watson and you gave him $233 million guaranteed, you don't spend another man's money without his approval. So Jimmy Haslam signed off on that move. And now that Jimmy Haslam is getting a taste of winning and getting taste of franchise stability under this Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski regime, if it means Jimmy Haslam has got to write some checks, Jimmy Haslam is going to write some checks to manipulate the NFL salary cap. And where does that start? That starts with quarterback number 4. That starts with Deshaun Watson. The Browns will do the same thing they did last offseason with Deshaun's contract. There are several other players. They can do the same thing as well. And all of a sudden, we're going to hear the Cleveland Browns only have $17 million in cap space. And all of a sudden, it's going to be $30 million. And all of a sudden, it's going to be $40 million. And then it's going to be $50-something million. If Jimmy's, who cares? Let the man spend his money the way he wants to spend his money. It ain't my money. It ain't your money. Jimmy wants to keep kicking the can down the street. That's fine. If that's what he wants to do for the ultimate pursuit of a Super Bowl for the city of Cleveland and for this Browns fan base, Jimmy, let it rain. Throw the money. Who cares? He's got a ton of it, and he ain't missing a dime of it. The Cleveland Browns are going to be extremely active in the wide receiver market. They are going to be extremely active in the running back market. The draft class for the wide receiver class is a good one. The Browns are going to get to the party too late. The running back class is just not going to be good enough. Speaking of saving money, we're going to get to segment 3. Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns. I appreciate you all for being along for the ride. I know we come to sports as an escape. I get it. But we need to talk just for a minute about preparing for real life. Look, we're parents. We're getting older. We work. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the dead of winter, usually the time where most people are getting sick, and it's kind of scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if Amory or one of my kids got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from the life-saving medication they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among many others. This stuff could happen to any of us. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $10 off your first order. Continuing on here, your latest Locked On Browns, your host, Jeff Lloyd, and I appreciate each and every one of you who make this show your first listen every single day. If you are not a Locked On Browns everydayer, well, get on the bus, Gus, and subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure right after this ends, you check out Locked On Sports 247. You can get all your playoff coverage, NFL playoff coverage here from our fabulous hosts. We still have 8 teams alive in the NFL playoffs fighting for spots in the AFC and the NFC championship. Your third bold prediction, I told you, Browns will be heavy on a free agent wide receiver and will land one. The Browns will be heavy on a free agent running back and land one. And your third one, the Cleveland Browns have somewhat of a good problem at the offensive tackle position. Jedrick Wills, I think a lot of people, the naysayers even for Jedrick Wills, probably feel better about Jedrick Wills than they have in the past. But Jedrick Wills on a 5th-year option, which should be somewhere in the market of $15 million. Jack Conklin on the hook for a lot of money. And then there's Dawand Jones. The way Dawand Jones performed this past fall does not mean that Dawand Jones is going to go into camp as a swing tackle, or he's going to be the guy that will be the break glass emergency guy if something happens to one of the other guys. What the Browns learned is that Jedrick Wills is a pretty good offensive left tackle. Is he probably worth the money the Browns are going to give him this year? No. But the amount of time that Jedrick Wills missed, and look, again, Jerron Christian didn't go out there and say, make anybody forget about the likes of Joe Thomas. But what the Browns saw was below average to average. It wasn't that much of a difference. It didn't affect this team this much. So there's no way they're going to pay this money to Jedrick Wills. They're going to do everything they can to trade Jedrick Wills. Do I think it gets them a day 2 pick? No. Will they probably take back a pick somewhere in day 3? Absolutely. Maybe even a pick swap. The Browns are going to make Dawand Jones their left tackle for 2024. You have Hubbard, who can play right tackle. So what do you do next then if you're the Cleveland Browns? This is maybe where you used your draft capital. Maybe your 2nd-round pick, maybe your 3rd-round pick. This is maybe where you start looking into that. And you go draft another left tackle. If he's not good enough to play left tackle, he can play right. But there's also that Alex Leatherwood equation. Has not been signed to a futures deal yet. And that'll certainly be a testament to what they felt of Alex Leatherwood and having him on the practice squad for a year. We'll see if that name gets announced as somebody that comes back to the Browns on a futures deal, former 1st-round pick. But the Cleveland Browns have too many starting offensive tackles. Dawand Jones is not going to be happy sitting, and deservedly so. Jack Conklin, just plug him back in at right tackle and hope for once that the health fairy can sprinkle some pixie dust on Jack Conklin, and the Browns can get the version of Jack Conklin that they had his first year with the Cleveland Browns. But again, the Browns starting Jerron Christian and James Hubbard for as long as they did this year found out for them the core is the interior part of the offensive line. So as the years go on and Joel one day eventually retires and Wyatt Teller, his days here in Cleveland would come to an end. The Browns, if this regime's still intact, would have to start. The more important onus would be eventually replacing those guys, not replacing the offensive tackles. The Browns just got a long look at extended playing time for a 4th and a 5th string offensive tackle. And the Cleveland Browns finished the regular season at 11-6 and went to the playoffs. So they are not going to write this check for Jedrick Wills. And, Jedrick Wills, who did everything he could to try to come back to this team this year, and I give him all the credit in the world, a guy who's probably been a punchline more than he deserves to be. And if anybody is guilty of it, anybody else, it's me. No doubt. I don't take onus to it. But him being out, the Browns saw extended time from guys that weren't even here in Jerron Christian and kind of held it down, kind of held his own. And with that, that was the biggest issue for Jedrick Wills. Is the Browns said, look, what was the difference? For $13 million, what's the difference? For what they'll pay Dawand Jones next year, he's got to be almost as good as Jedrick Wills to make it sound feasible. Do I think he'll be better? Probably. It's not a tough benchmark to sell when you're talking about $13-14 million. And that's going to be the decision the Cleveland Browns make. They will move on from Jedrick Wills in any way they can. Hopefully, Jed can reestablish himself somewhere else. But this is your 3 bold predictions. The Cleveland Browns are going to sign a big-name free agent wide receiver. They are going to sign a veteran free agent, and they are going to move Jedrick Wills, and they are going to make Dawand Jones their starting left tackle for the 2024 season. I am Jeff Lloyd, host here at Locked On Browns. I appreciate each and every one of you. Keep coming back every day. We're going to be here every day. You guys know the drill. If you're not part of the everyday crowd by now, look, man, you don't need no redeem code. You don't need to know nobody. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.